We're live, baby.
Third Chance Foundation, episode 13, or were you 13 while I was gone, Drago?
Episode 13, baby. Let's go.
This is lucky episode 13. We're here with one of Drago's good friends, who I'll let him introduce. Brian. We're called the Third Chance Foundation because I've been given 3 chances in life, adopted at childbirth, and given a chance at life then. Given a chance to stay out of prison when I was convicted for felony drug possession with massive intent to deliver. I don't want to call it a slap on the wrist, but because of my schooling and my athletic background, I was given a little slap on the wrist and made good with that for a while. And then at the height of my drug addiction, January 18th, 2010, I tried to take my life by overdosing on cocaine. So I am a recovering cocaine addict, been clean 14 years. And a lot of you know Drago's story. I'll let him tell his story and introduce his friend Brian.
Let's go, baby. Episode number 13. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is my boy, Brian Sanfilippo. We're going to get like a 10,000 views, dude, because everybody's going to be like, dude, Bean's on Facebook with Drago. Tune in, right?
There's a lot. Hey, I haven't been on Facebook in like 10 years.
I know,
people probably think I'm dead or something.
I know, dude. But everybody, thanks for joining in. My name is Jeff Dragovich. I'm an addict too. 3 chances, try to kill myself in front of my kids by an overdose. Many times, stealing money and not going to prison and, making horrible decisions. So third chance was like my 100th chance. So appreciate you guys coming on here. Today we got my buddy, Brian Sanfilippo. Dude, listen, I met this dude back in high school. I'm the first time I met you, dude, we played the same position. So we played offensive line together. So Brian's a year, you're 2 years.
Let me guess by looking at you. He was the starter and you were the backup.
Hey, man, I had good technique, baby. Let's go.
One year older
1 year.
than you,
1 year, dude. So we came up together. This is my good buddy for a long time. And I reconnected with him out here in Las Vegas when I caught him at a concert. And I'm like, dude, we got to do this podcast. And I just feel like, from somebody that maybe necessarily didn't come from a life of addiction, that's like in that industry and is helping people get clean and sober and, get their life back together, like that touches me. And so I was like, dude, you got to come on the podcast and we got to talk to you.
Come on the pod. That's right. Thanks for being here, Brian.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
What concert did you guys reconnect? Let me guess. Social D.
Yeah. Social Distortion, Bad Religion in Vegas. Yeah. I flew out for the concert and ran into this guy and found out what he was doing. And I said, it'd be my pleasure. Just let me know when and where.
Hey, listen, there's 10,000 people at this concert, right? And like Brian is a massive human and I haven't seen him forever. And I was with my wife and my wife's like, look at that dude. I'm like, oh my God, that's my buddy, Brian. I swear to God, I could see, I knew you. I could see you from the back. I'm like, that's Bean. Let's roll. There you are.
Yeah, cool. No, it was a nice surprise.
Hey, Brian, why don't you, where are you out of? Tell us about your journey into helping people in recovery and just maybe talk about your day-to-day a little bit.
All right. So, I mean, my story takes some interesting paths. I grew up in Southern California with Drago. We grew up in Orange County, well-off area, played football, ended up getting a scholarship, came out to Missouri, played college football out here. Ended up playing some arena football as well. Decided to just focus on school and ended up graduating with a journalism degree. At that point, I started coaching wrestling at a high school and doing full-time substitute work. All the while, this whole entire time, my whole entire life, I've worked in bars and nightclubs. It's just been a job that I've been really connected to, and it was something I was good at. Well, I had a choice to go work in New York at a sleepaway summer camp. And so I went up to New York. I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was working with the kids up there, and it was a great experience. So I ended up doing it the next summer. Well, after that, I came back to Missouri, and I ran into a buddy at a bar, and he said he was going to Korea to teach English. Yep. And I said, I'm coming with you. The next day, I went and bought a passport. applied for a job. 3 days later, I was hired. 3 months later, I was on a plane going to Korea. Ended up staying in Korea for 3 years, teaching English and being a speechwriter for kids in my school. When it was time to come back to anywhere in the United States, I had reverse culture shock. And it was a real struggle of trying to identify where I wanted to go. So I decided to come back out to Missouri. And one night I had no real direction, and I was at a nightclub, and I ran into one of the bouncers who I played college football with. And he was the clinical supervisor of an adolescent substance abuse rehab. And he said, "Hey, you've been working with kids for a while. I run a place that works with kids. How about you come give it a try?" And I said, "Okay." So I came and I started out as a behavioral health technician, which is the entry level. I was making, I think, $8 an hour. And it was a 16-bed adolescent substance abuse facility. So kids, it was, I think, 12 to 17 was the age range, but we usually had kids that were 13 or 14 to 17 that would come in for a 60-day treatment. And through that process, I started to educate myself and listen to the counselors and go to the different groups because I wanted to continue to move up. I became an associate counselor from that point, continued to study, and then I became a certified counselor. So I'm a nationally recognized certified counselor for substance abuse, alcohol and drug counselor. And then I continued to move up through that process to clinical supervisor. And now I'm a program director.
Awesome, bro.
I would say about 2 years ago, we decided to make some changes within the company, and we shut our adolescent unit down and moved our adult unit into this building. And so now I'm currently running an 18-bed adult substance abuse facility. They're here from usually anywhere around, 2 weeks to 30 days. It depends on their level of need and necessity, the medical necessity for treatment. We also offer outpatient services. We have about 400 clients in our caseload. And so we offer virtual groups, live groups, counseling, therapy, case management, peer support, employment and housing services. And that's all housed within the building that I'm in here. And we just basically are just trying to help out anybody who wants the help and get them back on the right path to reach their full potential. And
that's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
You guys have the full gamut there, huh? Like basically anything, right? Like basically like they come to you, you're gonna if they want the help, right? That's always the biggest thing is like, do they want the help to get better? They, everybody says they want the help and they want to get better, but do they want to do the work?
But at the end of the day, at least them reaching out is a step in the right direction.
For sure.
Because, a lot of times, I'll have people and I'll say, "Hey, just swing by I'll run into them, in the streets." And like I said, I still work in the bar scene. So I still have access to people who are struggling at times. And that's something that I value, is that with my day job, my ability to recognize things with the night job and then be able to maybe speak to them on the side or just let them know, "Hey, I'm here." Or if they have family members who are struggling. And what I'll do is I'll say, just have them come into my office and talk. They don't have to be a client. Just come to my office building. Come talk to me for 15, 20 minutes. Let me figure out what's going on. And then I can give you some advice of the direction that I feel could be beneficial and assist them with that if they choose to. Some listen, some don't. But at least I know that I'm giving the advice that I would give to my loved ones coming to me with the same problems.
What's the main issue or difference that you see from when you were serving, our youth and compared to adults? And, is there warning signs that you see in youth that you think need to be addressed when these signs come up? And what are those signs?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me with working with adults, it's more life and death. The dangers that the adults are facing are being recognized by overdose and death and just the horrific situations that they're experiencing. A lot of times with the teenagers, it was something that they were told could happen, but they weren't truly experiencing it. So a lot of the youth they weren't here of their own accord. It was a court order, a juvenile officer, DYS, Division of Youth Services, a parent. And what I saw with the biggest area that I saw with the youth would have to be the peer groups and the home life. When there's no communication in the home, no open and honest communication in the home, the fear of telling mom and dad exactly what's going on, then that's where things start going off the rail.
Interesting.
And which I understand completely, because mom and dad, they hear that information and they get fearful. Right. And sometimes they don't know how to communicate in a healthy way when they're experiencing that fear, which is then off-putting for the kid.
Which is usually like reactive, right? Like the parents like don't know, they feel helpless, they just react and like, you got to go do this, you got to go there, right?
Or if they come home and say, hey, you know, my friend Timmy just got busted for smoking weed. You can't hang out with Timmy. You can't do, and just start going off on them. When in all actuality, what they should do is kind of maybe look at the situation and appreciate that the kid was being honest.
Right.
And there's a reason why the kid was coming forward and saying something. I speak at schools for Red Ribbon Week. I'll speak in front of entire middle schools and high schools. And one of the biggest things that I say is, you know, I'll give them a message and I'll say, do you trust me? And they'll say, yeah, we trust you. And I said, why do you trust me? I said, you don't even know me. I'm a stranger. I said, you met me 15 minutes ago. And I said, and I'll be honest, if you die tomorrow, I'm not losing any sleep. But at the end of the day, the people who truly love you that are going to be completely damaged by the actions and death of you are your mom and your dad, but you're too scared to go talk to them, or you're not willing to listen to what they have to say.
Wow.
And so it's, you know, for them, it's an eye opener. And I'll be honest, that's one of the coolest things about my job, because I'll have kids that I spoke to at an assembly 8 years ago, and they're young adults now, and they'll come up to me and they'll remember some of the clients that I brought that shared their story, and they'll remember some of the messages. They might not remember it all, but for a kid to remember a random assembly 8 years later, I mean, to me, that's why we do what we do.
That's amazing. So Drago, it's kind of like what we keep saying about what we've talked about on several episodes, Brian, like, hey, we're both addicts and we'd be foolish to think that our kids couldn't possibly be, with 7 kids between the two of us, right? That there's not going to be one that has our same qualities and our same DNA and going to have problems with opioids or uppers or cocaine, right? So we've been on this journey of just being transparent with our kids and telling them what drugs did to us and tell them exactly what we did and the path it took us down and where it took us to. And hey, here's what's different now in your day and age with fentanyl out there and, you know, some of these other crazy drugs I haven't even heard of. And that's the difference now between when I was using and your potential is your first time using could be your last because of this. And
cocaine.
Right?
Cocaine back in the day, right? You'd get a bag of cocaine. You didn't have to worry about anything except for ridiculous conversations at 4 a.m.
Right.
But now you need to. But now you have to actually test it to make sure there's no fentanyl in it, because your body is not going to react the same, and you can instantly go into overdose and die because you don't have the appropriate thing. You don't have Narcan around. You don't have the things around because you're using cocaine. You're not expecting to use that fentanyl.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you talk, like you coming from like more of the professional side, because like we talking through these podcasts, it's like, oh, how do we open up to our kids? How do we be open and honest with them? And like what you're saying is they just want to hear the truth from mom and dad, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? So like I feel like that's what, as a professional coming here, like the more open and honest and just to the point about what I'm trying to express with them, I just feel like that the better.
I think it's the way it's being tactful, right? About how we communicate. But yeah, I mean, they need to understand that addiction does run through the genes. It's hereditary.
Yeah.
Right. There's science that supports that. that it has ability, and it might not be the addiction to cocaine that they experience. It might be an addiction to something else. And, you know, any time that your life is negatively impacted by something, then there's a reason to address it. Right. And so with kids these days, it might be social media, right? It might be their phone, you know, not being able to put the phone down. And as we've seen, that has limited the ability to communicate face to face in appropriate and healthy ways. You know, I'm never on my phone, right? I like to use my phone on how to get from location A and B when I don't know where I'm going there, or the occasional text message. But I love to sit at a restaurant and watch all the people on their phones. But if I went up to them and I said, "Hey, you've got a phone issue," they would say, "What are you talking about?" No, I don't, because it's almost because it's like socially accepted. Yeah. And substance use is not socially accepted in some areas of the community. But at the end of the day, to me, it's the same kind of thing, right? If you need a cup of coffee to get going in the morning, how are you any different than the person, you know, who's doing something else to get going in the morning? You still need you're still justifying that you need something to get moving. Now, the consequences are very different, yes, and the outcomes can be very different. But to me, we still have to look kind of at that in that kind of light.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so when you were working with the youth, like you were saying most youth come to you through like a parent or like some type of like a court system. What is this? Is it harder to get into a youth's head as far as like, hey, this is life or death, and these are I'm trying to provide you with tools so that you can live a healthy life because they were forced to go there? Do you see a difference in correlation? Like, my mom sent me to rehab. She paid a bunch of money, right? Sent me to rehab. I didn't really want to go. I just went, right? And I listened to what they had to say, but my mind was not open to anything that I learned in that rehab.
Yeah. You were faking it to make it.
For sure.
Right. And that's the terminology. But the way that I look at, okay, so let me touch on that at adolescent point here in a second. The idea of faking it to make it, to me, works. Because you were able to give back the information, which means that you were listening and you understood what was being said.
Fair enough.
Right? It's just you chose not to use, we call it fill in the toolbox. Yeah. Right? What we're doing is you have an empty toolbox and we're giving you the tools to fill it up and teaching you how to use those tools. It's up to you to use it. And at the end of the day, you had the knowledge from that time that you went to the rehab, but you just chose not to apply it in that moment.
Man, that's a good point. I never thought about that, because like I did listen to what they had to say, right? But on my journey, I didn't utilize any of those tools until I needed to, until I wanted to, until it was ready for me. So that's a good point. I never thought of it that way, because I did listen. I just wasn't applying anything.
Yeah. So when people are saying they just faked it to make it, at the end of the day, they were paying attention. They were learning something. They were learning enough to make sure that the treatment team was okay with them leaving successfully. Now, back to the adolescents. Yeah, no, the kids didn't want to be here. The kids didn't want to change. I mean, not all of them. But what I did is I used the technique of trying to let them know that if they change these little things, then these different areas of their life that they wanted to change would happen. So, like, let's say, you know, a kid was on probation. So they had their juvenile officer and they hated their juvenile officer. I would say you need to get off papers to get your freedom back, because what you have done is you've given up your freedom. The reason why you have a 7:00 curfew and all your other friends can be out in the streets is because you were on papers. So you need to follow the rules, not test positive for any drugs, not break any laws, get off paper, and then you're going to earn some of that freedom back, in the hopes that during that time, they'll learn that they can live life without the drugs or the criminal behaviors. But with teenagers, it's not life and death in their minds.
Yeah,
right?
Because they think they're going to live forever. Like I never, I mean, the way I used drugs as a teenager, if that was me now, I would be dead. Right.
We grew up in people, the clients always ask me, hey, are you an addict, or, are you in recovery? And I say, no. I said, I grew up in Southern California. We grew up in the land where you can get your hands on anything, and it was socially acceptable because of the social groups that we hung out with.
Yeah.
Right. The exploration of drug use was actually like promoted by the groups that we hung out with. But yet on the surface, we were the athletes. We were on student government. We were doing these things, and we didn't have social media. I swear, if we had social media when we were in high school, I would have been in jail by like week 3.
For sure.
But it's we were doing different things, and it was socially acceptable. And then as time goes on, we just some of us continued to go down a path. Some of us explored a little deeper, and some of us decided to go a different route. And the way I look at it, the fact that the 3 of us are sitting here today, we're 3 lucky ones.
That's right.
Because there's a lot of people that don't make it. And it's sad, but it's true.
How often are you seeing people come out of the penitentiary system and needing help? And is there any treatment in Missouri for them while they're in penitentiary? Is there any rehabilitation and work that they do in the prison system? And how often are you working with that type of adult coming out of penitentiary?
So my knowledge of the actual treatment inside a penitentiary is very limited. The one thing that I do know is they're doing Vivitrol shots. Basically, it's an opioid receptor blocker.
Right, like a long-term Zuboxone, right? Or Wtech?
No, Vivitrol is like a 28-day shot. I believe it's 28 days.
Okay.
And basically, it blocks the opioid receptor so they can't get high when they use. Now, overdose can still happen, from my understanding, but it's limited. So what the problem was that people were getting out of prison and then going back and using exactly what they were using before, or the stuff was stronger, and they were overdosing. So there is treatment that's taking place in prison. Now, where I work, we have a program called ICTS, and we work with people on probation and parole. And so what they're doing is the IPOs, which are the probation officers inside the prisons, are setting up referrals to the outside probation officers and parole officers to then get them connected with these ICTS programs in the state of Missouri, and they get them connected into treatment. And with that treatment, they have a complete team that is dedicated to them, wraparound services. So right now in my program, we have 20 clients in the ICTS program. We are so hands-on with those 20 clients. We also, help financially. If a client needs new tires for their vehicle, we'll purchase the new tires for the vehicle, which then causes them to not do those criminal actions or activities that they would do in the past to pay for those tires.
Pay for it, right?
Nice.
Right. And so those little things, we're removing some of those barriers. We have a house that they live in. We have 7 guys that can live in a house, and it's rent-free, bill-free. The only thing they have to do is do treatment. And then after a certain amount of time, we try to get them a job and let them stack up their money and do budgeting and learn how to do these things. So we're removing those barriers.
Yeah.
I get a call all the time from a guy who actually, he's getting out of prison next week. He was in our ICTS program. He failed, or he didn't fail. He was unsuccessful, went back to prison, was revocated. And he's been calling me this whole entire time he's been in prison. Hey, is there any chance I can get back in the program? So this whole time I've been giving him advice on what he needs to do on his part to try to get the probation, because that's all on probation and parole side, to get him back up to Cole County is where I'm at to get back into it. Now on the jail side, one of the things I've seen a nice increase of is pretrial. So we have pretrial officers that are helping to get the people that are locked up in county jails into treatment. So, and work with the judges to allow furloughs, which means they're allowed to come to treatment for 30 days. And then when they're done, they have to return to jail to finish out their sentence. But what I'm seeing a lot of times is they're getting furloughed to treatment, and the client is making progress. And then they have a a court hearing while they're in treatment, and the judge decides them to release on own recognizance instead of heading back to jail. And then it's up to the client to succeed at that point.
Right.
So they were given the opportunity, and now it's up to them. But just giving them a chance, because sitting in jail and not working on themselves isn't going to do anything to change the situation.
No, and that's the kind of second chance I was given. I mean, my charges were enough to go away for probably 5 to 7 years. And, they saw enough in me, and I went through the treatment and tested clean and had jobs waiting for me. And, it's funny. I sent a big gratitude letter to the judge that gave me leniency, and we actually had a really cool conversation. And I thanked him and let him know what I became and how I've helped people out and the work that I do. And it's just real cool moment to, not everyone needs to be thrown in jail, and not everyone needs this harsh discipline and consequences. They need a little bit of support and understanding, and somebody that knows what they're going through to be a sounding board. So that's amazing that you get to provide that, Brian.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, though, it comes down to you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You were given the opportunity and you ran with it.
Yeah.
And you, if I had to guess, there were some stumbles, there were some barriers, but there was a driving force within you to make you succeed. Right. And you also, in those situations, you usually will have some kind of support system. Now, we might not recognize it as a traditional support system, but some kind of support system to help you along that path. Right.
But if there's not guys like you, you know what I'm saying? Like you're the conduit that pushes everything together. So like, if we didn't have people like you that were doing what you're doing, like we would have a lot of problems.
All I have is I've got understanding, patience. I'm understanding, I'm patient, and I have 2 ears. Right. I mean, sometimes, all they need is somebody to talk to. And also the patience is a big thing, and understanding is a big thing, because a lot of the clients that we work with are judged elsewhere because of who they are, what they've done. And it comes down to, I don't care who you are or what you've done, because your actions yesterday are not necessarily who you need to be. It's your actions today that will dictate tomorrow. So if you make good choices today, tomorrow is going to be a better day, right? If you are respectful today, then you and I are in great standings tomorrow. And, who you were when you were in your active addiction, I'm not going to hold that against you, because I'm not coming from the legal side, right? Yeah. It's because that's what it is. It's if I held that against them, I should have a whole bunch of people that hold stuff against me. Right. Because I'm a human, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my life and treated people poorly because of where my mindset was at the time, of either under the influence of whatever, or alcohol, or, where my direction or focus was on. So it's just being patient and understanding and having a couple of years and just being willing to help, being a human.
And you come from a non-biased point of view too, right? Like you're not family, you're not judging them. So I feel like, and I never really thought about that wouldn't, because we always like the last podcast I was talking about, like how I just always felt like a piece of shit. And then my mom like texted me and she's like, I'm so sorry if I made you feel like a piece of shit. And I was like, well, everybody did. Right. But that's because the family, loves me, and they're opinionated on like what was going on. So I feel like if I had that buffer, that non-bias, which to be fair, like when I got it together and I decided that I was going to get sober, I mean, I went to a meeting and I met people just like you that were in recovery, that had a lot of years, but like weren't judging me because I was a shitbag yesterday. You know what I'm saying? And that's what really made the difference for me. They just pointed. I just followed. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like you're doing the same thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have a huge open, like right now I'm in my office and my door's shut, and it's given me a little bit of anxiety because I have an open door policy here. We've got groups running right now, but clients are constantly walking by my office, and just popping in and grabbing a seat, sharing either the good stuff they got going on, the bad stuff, or if they have a question, or, hey, I need to grab a shower. Can I go grab a shower? Can I go wash some clothes upstairs? Like, I just want them to know that we're here for them. Right. And yeah, you might have been an asshole when you were in your active addiction, Drago. You know, you might have been a guy
I was.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might have been somebody that I saw. And even though we have a long history, you know, I might have been like, what's up, man? And then kind of kept on walking because whatever was happening, you know, but at the end of the day, you found a way to make your way out of it. And, you know, and looking back and I think reflecting on our own life and maybe the not so great things that we've done and using that to drive us. One of the things I like to say is the reason I do this is so I can sleep well tonight. If I help people today and make good decisions today, I'm going to be able to sleep well tonight. Because if I look back at my life, I made a lot of really poor decisions. And I feel like I'm kind of trying to make up for that with what I'm doing today.
Interesting. That makes sense.
Awesome, man. I would say, you know, one thing we keep talking about, and I'd like your take on this is, you know, you get people who, let's say, have cancer, for example, right? And they get everybody's support. They get I even got one on, Brian Strong because he's going through cancer bracelets, right? And prayer text messages and, Facebook posts of please pray for Brian because he's going through cancer. And the addict doesn't get any of that. In fact, they get shame and judgment. But it's an illness just like cancer is, right? And until the general public and especially family and friends have that understanding of what their loved one's going through when they're trying to get sober, trying to get clean, trying to get off the sauce or the drugs or whatever is their addiction, it needs to be treated like a disease and an illness because it's what it truly is.
Yeah. And so I'm probably not one of the best people to make, that kind of correlation. But but I stay consistent, right? When I hear, somebody, my aunt is dealing with cancer right now again. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I know I probably should reach out and send those messages of support and wear pink. But my thing is, she knows that I'm here if she needs to call, if she wants to. And so it's kind of the same way with the clients. Like I don't go out of my way to show that support. It's like I'm here when you're ready for it, and I'll never not be here. If my aunt called me every single day, I would talk to her every single day. But yeah, it is the same kind of thing, but they don't have the supports in the community because they're looked down upon, right? And it's often because of the actions that go along with addiction.
Yeah.
The criminal behaviors, the way that they have treated their family, the way they've treated members in their community. And so all of a sudden, then the community is pointing a finger and saying that person's bad, without ever really trying to understand that maybe that person was struggling with some childhood trauma that they didn't even recognize that they were dealing with, which led to addiction. And they just need somebody to help support them. And just because you live in a house and you think that you don't have addiction in your house, it's wild. It's wild the way that some people look at it and look down on those who are dealing with drug addiction or alcohol addiction.
Which is why we're doing this, right? Like we just want to get the word out that it shouldn't be a stigma anymore. We have an incurable brain disease, and we just need people like you that are willing to listen and point and give good advice.
Well, I mean, heck, you said the brain gets rewired.
Fair enough.
You know what I'm saying? Like your brain gets rewired and things are not firing the way that they should be. And guess what? It took time to mess it up and it's going to take time to fix it. And it might never be completely fixed. It's like I talk about, so co-occurring is a big thing, the connection between mental health and substance abuse.
Right.
And I look at it like a dam, right? If you have a dam and there's water always trickling out of that dam, right? There's water always trickling out of that dam at some kind of speed, but there's no damage happening to the property on the river down below that dam because it's coming out at such a slow pace. But sometimes when you use drugs, you're opening up that dam and that water's coming out and that water creates damage. And so it takes time to fix that, right? And the question is, you know, is that crack or is that opening of the dam able to close as tight as it was once you open it up full bore with that drug? Who knows?
Maybe.
Right. But there is a connection between the two. And we have to understand that the damage made takes time to clean up, and we need to understand it. And we need to be understanding and maybe do some self-education. Right. And so that way we can assist the people in our life. You know, males, think about this. Males don't recognize trauma like females do, right? There are things that males experience that we chalk it up to being a boy, to being a man, right? When we see somebody get beat down and knocked unconscious in a fight, guess what? That's not normal behavior, right? But we chalked it up as, oh, did you see that? Did you see that fight on the street? Think about it.
Being boys, right? Boys being boys, right?
Yeah, think about it. But that actually starts to rewire our brain some, right? And it becomes unresolved traumas that we have inside of ourselves that we don't even recognize that truly affects us, you know, from the inside out. It's a trip. Like, I don't have all the knowledge. And listen, everything that I'm saying is what I'm saying it, right? And these are my beliefs and my thoughts, and I could be completely wrong, right? But that's the way that I look at it. You know, there were things that we did in high school, Drago, that were not normal. They were not normal behaviors. But because of the situation and because of the audience that we had, that's what it became. It appeared to be normal for us. Yeah. But looking back at it, I shake my head and I'm like, you know, I wish I could go back and maybe change some of that stuff. But once again, we can't go back. So it's my actions today will dictate tomorrow.
And what they also say too, like your past behavior is what allows you to be the person that you are today, right? So like, I wouldn't recommend, you know, showing up at another high school and trying to fight some dudes. You know what I'm saying? Remember that? I mean, like, or going to Disneyland and fighting dudes at a McDonald's parking lot. Like, so, but hey, it is what it is. That's what made us who we are today.
Yeah, no, and that's
Cali turf wars, I'm hearing.
No, absolutely ridiculous. Anyone out there, the California or the Disneyland local stories, I love telling those now because it blows people's minds. Having a Disneyland pass for $99 for a whole year, and sneaking people in and doing all sorts of dumb stuff, and that's what we did. That's wild. But yeah, it's you know, yes. The things that we have done in the past make us who we are today.
Correct. That's what I was.
Right. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm okay with who I am today.
So Brian, I love before we got on, you talked a little bit about groups you get in front of in, you know, middle schools, high schools. I think you said, what is some of the advice that you give, and what would be some of the advice if we have, you know, teenagers or young 20-something listeners or parents that have kids that age? What would just be some advice of, you know, to avoid having to get treatment and getting wrapped up in drugs or alcohol, and just maybe some of the tips and tactics that you give at these talks?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do is I'm a larger individual. I'll pull a kid out of the crowd. And I'll say, I'm going to give you $20. I'm going to flip this quarter. If it's heads, you get the $20. Tails, you and I are going to go fight for 5 minutes in that closet. And then they'll look at me and I'll say, all right, let's hold up. Let's ask your friends. and I'll say, hey, which of your friends, which one, raise your hand out of the friends who want him to go ahead and do this and try to win the $20. And usually the friends' hands go up in a heartbeat. Right. And then I'll look at the kid and the kid be like, no. I'll say, okay, how about this? How about $100? $100, flip the coin, heads it's yours, tails we go fight for 5 minutes. And then he starts to ponder and think about it. And all the friends have their hands up and half the school have their hands up saying, take the bet. But what it comes down to is I just want to show how easily influenced people can be. Even though that kid next to me knows that it is a completely losing thing to do to fight me. Now he knows I'm not going to really fight him because I'll go to jail for it. But what it comes down to is just the way that he's in their brain, how they bounce back and forth. And so I think about being aware of the influence that friends or peer groups or settings or audiences have on the different individuals or on yourself.
So powerful. No, that makes complete sense, man.
If you act differently because there's an audience around, you kind of need to check yourself, right? And if you think about in the bar scene, you know, there might be a customer on a slow night who's quiet and can have a conversation with the bartender, but then all of a sudden, you know, there's a full bar and the person's acting like an asshole, right? And it's because there's an audience and they're trying to peacock or trying to show off.
Right.
It's the same way with kids. And I think, and, you know, and also I was talking about, you know, me being a stranger and them listening to me. I give them two paths. I say, if you go down this path, it's going to be rough. You're going to deal with heartache, pain, destruction, and death. Now, if you go down this path, it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to make it. You're going to have family that supports you and friends that support you. Which path are you going down? And they always pick the right path. And that's where I'm saying, but you're listening to a stranger that truly, I'll be honest, I truly don't give a shit about them because I don't know them.
Right.
I care about them as a human, but all they are is a face. Now, if I got more time with them and got to, you know, maybe after school program or something, then that would change. But the people who truly care about them and love them, that are telling them the same exact messages, their teacher, their coaches, their grandma, their grandpa, their aunt, their uncle, their mom, and their dad, they're not listening to because of their titles. So I think it's really important for, if there are any kids out here, find someone you can talk to, find someone you can trust, right? And open up that dialogue and use them, because, you know, when you're young, you don't think, oh, adults, they think they know everything. You know, they don't know how it is to be a teenager these days. Guess what? I don't know what it's like to be a teenager these days, but I've got some good advice that will help you out, right? And so it's just opening up that line of communication. I can talk to a teenager, young kid, whatever. It doesn't even matter. And I'm going to give them the same advice that I would give a loved one, because they're taking the time to talk to me. And I just want to plant a seed of hope and direction for them.
So if I'm a parent, I got 3 little girls and I want to have a talk with them about this. Any words of advice for me and Drago as we have young kids? He's got some teenagers, how to have these conversations and how to just start the ball rolling towards, hey, you can come to me, we can talk, you can be open and honest with me.
Yeah, Ben and Jerry's, pint of ice cream, Sunday bar. No, it's no, I think it's all about. I think it's about the setting, right? And so the question to me would be: would that conversation be better had one-on-one? You know, is it daddy-daughter day, and you have 3 daddy-daughter days? I know it's a lot for a schedule. We make excuses saying we're busy, but it's something like this is important. But what you're doing is you're giving your total attention to just one daughter, right? And you're spending your time with them, and you're just basically letting them know, hey, I don't know how old the kids are, but whatever they're going, whatever age they are, hey, you know, I'm here for you. You know, if you're having problems with something, I'm here for you. Just come talk, kind of talk to me. And it's just about being consistent. It's about being consistent, because if I'm okay with talking with the kid on Tuesday, but then I'm too busy to talk to the kid on Thursday, then there's no consistency there, right? I need to recognize that, hey, I need to be consistent so they know that they can come talk to me, and I'm not going to make excuses. Because a lot of times as adults, what we do is we look at our schedule and we justify why we don't have the ability to do something. When in all actuality, we probably have the ability to shift a couple things or just suck it up and struggle and make time. That's just, I mean, but I think everyone's situation is going to be different. Dynamics are different. What's the household dynamics? What's the relationships with the kids? What are the ages of the kids, right? So there's no blanket answer. But I think consistency is the number one thing, and knowing that they can come talk to you. And also maybe not going off the rails when you hear something you don't like.
Yeah.
Because
I think what you said before was beautiful. Like you mentioned, hey, Timmy got caught smoking weed. You can't fly off the handle about that and say, oh, Timmy's a bad kid and you can't be around Timmy. Because then if they ever make that mistake, that's the main thing to me that started the addiction spiral, the downward spiral, was the shame and the guilt. Right. I think it's that way with just anything you can go through, if it's pornography or drinking or drugs. Like once you start feeling that shame and guilt, then it's just like this repetitive thing that keeps making you do it. Right. And it's, hey, I feel terrible and I feel all this shame and guilt. But the dopamine rush from doing what I'm addicted to will give me the spike back up so I don't feel this way. It's this vicious circle.
Yeah, it's the reward. It's the reward in the moment. And as we learn, that reward gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and we keep chasing that reward.
Yeah.
Right.
And the consequences keep getting greater and greater.
Yeah. And it just gets worse and worse, and we keep getting dragged down. And then we have a case of the fuck-its. And when we have a case of the fuck-its, that's when things don't go well. And what I mean by that, so if I have a client who's on probation and they get drug tested on a regular basis and they slip up and they use, and then they have a case of the fuck-its, they're like, you know what? I've already used. I might as well keep on using.
Yeah. When
in all actuality, what they could have done is could have come in and said, hey, probation officer, I slipped up on Sunday night. I haven't used since. You can drug test me and check my levels. I need to step up my treatment game. I need to go talk to my counselor. The probation officer is probably going to want to work with that person. Yeah, they're still going to have to document it, that the person admitted drug use. But at the end of the day, the consequences are not going to be as bad as if they said fuck it and continued to use and just basically were waiting to get caught.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Great Brian, point. This is awesome, man. I appreciate your work. I love what you do. I love that you look for it in your job outside of recovery and treatment and look to help people. And just, I think we can build walls with other humans or we can build bridges. And I just see you as a bridge maker and someone that gives a path. Because it's hard to open up and talk for the first time of what you're struggling with and have that conversation and be willing to confide in someone, especially, and I'm a man, so I wouldn't know how a female feels, but especially as a man, we're taught to suppress, push it down further. And I did that for so long. And then I exploded. Right. I mean, it was ugly, the things I would do when I would explode. So, man, just thank you for being you and showing up today. And I'll let your boy Drago take us out.
Yeah, man. Great. Brian, appreciate you, brother. We had a bunch of people on. Scott Schutze, Arn was all saying what's up on Instagram. So you got to say what's up.
Is that it?
Bro.
Oh, no. I need one now.
Hey, don't tell the high school we stole a helmet when we left.
Yeah, we were supposed to return those. My bad. Sorry, Found Valley.
Sorry, Found Valley.
Yeah, but listen, if you're out there and you're watching this, like we're doing this because we want to help. So if you're thinking about getting into recovery, you're thinking about getting into something, you need somebody to talk to, you need somebody to hug you, anything. I would much rather take your call at 3:00 in the morning than have to go to your funeral. We are here and we're available. We're stopping the stigma of addiction. We do find happiness. We do find love. We do find financial freedom if you want it. It's there. It's always been there. You just got to do the work to do that. So I love you, bro. Thank you for taking the time to come talk with us. And you're my dog forever.
Hey, yeah. Hey, at least all the people on Facebook know I'm still alive.
You're still alive.
Yep.
All right, brother. Love you, man. Thanks, guys.
Day, guys.
You
all
too.
Right, bye.
Later.